going on? This is Sean Maluda, the king of the Savant Kick, and you're listening to Top of the Morning on TopRopeReport.com.
Aloha, brother. It's another glorious Saturday morning, and this is the Top of the Morning podcast, presented by TopRopeReport.com. Per usual, I am your host, Eric Ames, and I'm joined once again this week by pretty much the co-host of the show, TopRopeReport.com columnist and results specialist, Mr. Doug Berrill, as we review all the big stories in the world of professional wrestling over the last week. Before we get into that, some sad news, which most wrestling fans are aware of at this point. Hall of Famer Jim Ross, his wife Jan, was involved in an automobile accident recently, and unfortunately she passed away. So everybody here at TopRopeReport.com would definitely like to extend its sincere condolences to JR and his whole family. Really a sad situation for a guy who has had a pretty tough go of it with his multiple bouts with Bell's palsy and colon cancer and everything else he's dealt with. So definitely thinking about JR, the best commentator of all time, with all due respect to Gordon Soley. So yeah, this week's episode, like I said, we get into all the big stories over the past week. Of course, we talk about the Paige sex tape and kind of discuss our thoughts on that, whether WWE is doing the right thing by not laying down any punishment for that, laying down, no pun intended. Little inappropriate joke there. Of course, we talk about the negotiations between WWE and the Sinclair Broadcast Group to purchase Ring of Honor Wrestling. We get into Goldberg and his future and the chances of him sticking around after WrestleMania, the likelihood of the Hardys returning to the company, and then we talk about the big segments in our minds from Raw and SmackDown this week. Of course, on Raw, it was the firing of General Manager Mick Foley, and then on SmackDown Live, it was the very entertaining portrayal of John Cena and Nikki Bella by The Miz and Maurice. So here we go. This is episode 20 of the Top of the Morning podcast, the WWE Week in Review with Doug Berrill. Alright everybody, we are back, and I am joined once again by pretty much the co-host of the show at this point, TopRopeReport.com's Doug Berrill. Doug, what's the crack, fella?
Oh, not too much, and happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, it will be a couple days after my birthday, which I'm not going to say my age. Screw all of you. It's over 30. We'll say that much. It's on the lower end.
I was going to give you credit. I was going to say you're 29 again, right?
Right, again. For the third time?
Yes.
Fourth time? I don't know. I can't even... At this point, birthdays, they don't really mean much of anything. Everybody else makes kind of a bigger deal out of it than I do, which is nice. I mean, I got some pretty cool stuff, which generally doesn't happen the older you get, but I don't know. I guess you're an all right friend, I suppose, Doug.
You know.
I mean, he's acceptable.
Passable.
Passable, right. The kind of friend that CM Punk would... who am I kidding? CM Punk would definitely blow you off at some point.
He would.
He would definitely blackball you. So moving on, we're going to get into some of the big stories in the world of wrestling over the past week. But before we do that, of course, last week Doug had his second interview on the show with one of the stars of the local wrestling scene, a guy that's really been making a name for himself, Mr. Tyler Nitro. And then you got to see him in action last Friday evening at a Limitless Wrestling show that also featured Matt Sydal, formerly known as Evan Bourne, and Ricochet, who, as Doug told me before, tore the house down. So what else can you tell me about that show?
Well, it was a great...
Because I actually missed this one.
Right, yeah, no, it was a great show. They always do a great job. I knew that Nitro and Ethan Page would have a great match. I believe they went on second, which was a good spot for them, just because...
Doug doesn't remember because this was the first Limitless show that they were serving booze.
Right, yeah, no,
just so everybody knows.
I totally blacked out. Yeah. No, it was a great show. I think Nitro and Page went on second, and that was a great spot because I knew that would be kind of a pump-up, if not underrated match. Ethan Page has definitely made a name for himself and traveled around. Nitro's on his way to do that. I knew they would put on a good match, and they did. So props to you, Nitro. You took the loss, buddy, but hey, you're on your way. It was a good show. There was a couple, there was a promotion versus promotion match, which was good with freelance wrestling in, a promotion based out of Chicago. That was a lot of fun. Like you said, Ricochet and Matt Sydal, better known as Evan Bourne, they tore the house down, which was expected in the main event.
They've faced each other so many times now, especially in Japan, but don't bring up Japan to Matt Sydal.
Right, well, and they had great chemistry. Got to meet them both. They were both great dudes. And then the surprise of the night, it was St. Patrick's Day, and I imagine it's the one day a year that this guy gets the most requests for booking just out of nature, but we had a surprise appearance from Hornswoggle, so that was a lot of fun.
That's cool. The horniest of swoggles.
Yeah, so that was a cool surprise.
Well, when you told me that because of course a little birdie told you there was going to be a surprise and gave you a hint, and when you said it was something Irish related, it's immediately like, well, it's not Finlay or Sheamus or Becky Lynch, so I mean, who the hell else could it possibly be? So that's kind of a dead giveaway there. But yeah, Limitless keeps doing some really cool stuff like that, so definitely big props to Randy Carver, who I've only met in passing before. He's a very young guy, but he's doing some tremendous things and really revitalized the wrestling scene, at least locally here in Maine. So I'll definitely be looking to attend some more of those shows in the future. I can't remember why it was I didn't go to this one. I think there was some reason which I'm blanking on right now. But speaking of shows, the WWE is actually going to be in our neck of the woods tonight, which we will be in attendance for, the Road to WrestleMania tour. So I know what I'm looking forward to in this show, which is the Raw roster, by the way. So what is it that you're looking forward to?
I'm just looking forward to the show in general. I'm itching to go. We went to a house show the last time it was in Portland, and it's such a good time. If you ever get to go to a house show, which they brand as, they call them live events, they don't really call them house shows anymore, but they're house shows. They're non-televised shows. If they're ever in your town, definitely go, because you don't have to worry about TV, and you don't have to worry about that structure. Not only can the superstars do a lot more, but they also tend to experiment with things to see if things work. And I think that's a lot of fun, too.
And definitely not the kind of experimenting which we'll be talking about next.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to going. This is, of course, I do all the show coverage and pay-per-view coverage for TopRopeReport.com, so the last couple of Boston pay-per-views, you have not been going, but I am not able to go. So anytime there's a live event like this, it's the only time I really am able to go and just kind of not analyze things too much and just kind of be a fan. Plus, I always, I've been to so many shows, and I've pretty much seen just about every major name that you can ever think of, except for some of the newer guys. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Samoa Joe for the first time, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. I've seen the New Day guys before, but not as the New Day, so that will be cool. Gallows and Anderson, who else? Charlotte, Sasha, Bayley. I mean, there's just a plethora of people that I've never seen in person before, so that's definitely kind of the biggest thing for me, is to kind of scratch some more guys off of the list. The ones that I haven't seen, it's a little too late at this point. Chris Benoit, thanks a lot. But also Brock, Goldberg, Booker T, some of those WCW guys, because you're the WCW guy, I'm the WWE guy. So I never saw WCW, so a lot of those guys I kind of missed out on. Sting is one of them, but we got to meet him, so I mean that's kind of way cooler.
That makes up for it.
That definitely makes up for it, I think. So yeah, we're gonna get right into the big news over the past week, which there's been quite a bit. So we'd be a little remiss if we did not discuss the turmoil surrounding Paige. So of course, unless you've been living under a rock, or I don't know, or on drugs or something, I don't know how you could have missed out on this, especially if you're a guy, anyways. Last weekend, some pictures and videos from her phone, basically a sex tape, were leaked online after an apparent hack, and it's definitely not the kind of news that needs to be accompanying Paige after the last 12 months for her have really been, I mean, I don't really know how else to put it, but they've been not good. The thing about this situation that I think helps her out is the fact that she's been off TV for so long, and she will remain off TV for at least another couple of months, so I think that kind of helps it. And at the same time, it was a hack, so it's not, I know there's a lot of people thinking, like, or been speculating, oh, she put it out on purpose to try and create some more buzz surrounding the movie that's being filmed about her family, or to try and get fired, and I don't buy that whatsoever. I mean, it's a piss poor decision in the first place to film yourself doing anything of that nature, because it always comes out, and people just never seem to learn their lesson. But I think it would be an even worse decision to put something like that out there for the whole world to see until the end of time, or until the internet collapses, or whatever, just to try and get fired. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I definitely do not buy into that whatsoever. What's kind of your big takeaway from all this?
Well, I definitely don't buy into that either. And could you imagine if... I can't even imagine people theorizing that this was to promote the movie. This is about her upbringing and her family and her parents. So what better way to promote a movie about your upbringing and your parents
than by having a video of putting a dildo in your butt come out? Right. I mean...
How stupid are some people? Jeez,
I know when I want to promote TRR, that's definitely what I'm going to do next.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, if you guys haven't seen the video of Eric putting a dildo up his ass, then I just... I mean, you guys are just living under a rock. So.
You're missing out.
Yeah.
Now that that's out there, I wonder how many hits there will be for Eric Ames' butt dildo.
Right.
You're going to want to watch that.
Oh, well, it sounds like, WWE took the stance of they were kind of hoping and waiting that it would blow over. It sounds like they're not going to take severe action on her or Xavier Woods.
Any action whatsoever.
Yeah, and, and good for you, buddy.
Right. I cannot imagine that his wife, who is pregnant, by the way, is too happy right now, so that's a whole different story, so we'll see about that.
But, I was, like you said, it's been a bad, calendar year if you go back the last 12 months for Paige, with the suspensions, with the injury, and now with this. I'm just glad that they're not going to take any kind of severe action per se, because at the end of the day, it's not prudent. If you're in the spotlight, like anything that you do, you need to know that anything that you do, any picture that you take, any video that you record, any keystroke that you type could be subject to hacking and scrutiny. And so honestly, like if you're the WWE, you're sending somebody to the performance center and you're saying, look, before anything gets out, scrub your history and this is what could happen. So yeah, it was bad judgment to film that kind of stuff.
They definitely do that with in terms of social media accounts whenever they hire somebody.
Right, yeah. So I'm glad to know that they're not going to take any kind of severe action, because at the end of the day, it was a bad decision, but she was the victim of a privacy invasion.
What are your thoughts on? Well, first of all, before I get to that question, a lot of people have been comparing this to the Seth Rollins leak, which, let me just say, that is 1,000% completely different.
Yeah.
Once you're filmed having sex, that makes it way worse. So comparing it to Rollins, there's no comparison. You just can't do that. But what are your kind of thoughts on, the double standard where a lot of people are kind of like, yeah, Xavier, attaboy, and then those same people will be saying, oh, Paige, what a slut and a whore and all this other kind of stuff.
I think that's natural. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. It shouldn't happen, but it's going to happen. And yeah, I agree. It's a double standard, and it's a double standard that is completely unfair. And I don't support that double standard. And one thing I'm really worried about for Paige, because they were talking about, like, let's see if this whole thing blows over, and she's going to be off TV for a while. But look, people don't forget, and I am just so worried about her reception among, I don't want to be mean, dumb fans. Like, if you...
No, there are some dumb fans,
yeah, right.
Just say it.
But if you go to a show, like when Paige comes back, if you go to a show and you participate in any kind of chant or cheer that has any kind of implication toward this leak, you're an idiot, and it's going to do harm to her, and that's what I'm most worried about.
Yes, you're a stupid idiot.
Yes.
I just drew a blank on what I was going to say. Yeah, there definitely is a double standard, and whether that's right or not, I don't think it is, but unfortunately that's just the way that society is. For those people that are kind of, I don't want to say slut shaming, because she's not really a slut. We're all human beings. Just because these people are on TV doesn't mean that they don't take a dump or have sex or do any of the same things that the rest of us do. Unfortunately, the poor decision was made to film it, and of course they obviously never thought that any of it would come out. So granted, it's not a good look, but shame on you for thinking that she should be fired over this. Give me a break. That's all I have to really say about that. Everybody likes to act like they're all perfect, but I guarantee you she's not the only one to have ever done anything like that and had it filmed. She just happens to be a public figure.
And at the end of the day, if you were to ask me, take a guess, how many people on the roster, what percentage of the roster has ever filmed themselves in the buff or doing the deed or whatever? If you asked me to guess, I would probably say 60%. So I think a lot of the people on the roster, guys and gals alike, I think they could be subject to this kind of hack, which is why you've got to go down to that performance center and say right from the get-go, look, this is what you should and shouldn't do, because this is what could happen. And she's going to be an unfortunate example of that, just because she's had such a tumultuous 12 months.
And let's be clear, the timing of this coming out was no fault of her own, because obviously this was from their days in NXT,
Right.
which, I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point that Woods and Maddox lived together, so it's from somewhere the 2011 to 2013 range, so it's been some years.
Yep.
Like I said, just the timing of it is really, really bad, especially after all that's happened with her multiple suspensions and reportedly trying to quit the company and yada, 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 so I don't think that there will be, I think more people will be happy to see her when she finally does reappear, just because she's been off TV for so long, and honestly, if she remains on Raw, that division could really use her, like, desperately, and has needed her for a while.
Yeah, so I hope the fans just treat her right when she comes back. And, when I say that, I mean the live attendance.
Yeah, I don't foresee there being a problem. There's always going to be a couple of miscreants who like to create trouble, or, hey, let's chant CM Punk even though he's been gone for 3 years. How original. Like, come on now. Give me a break. Well, of course that wasn't the only big story over the past week, as it was revealed this week, just a couple of days ago, that the WWE has been in quote-unquote secret talks to buy out Ring of Honor, and it doesn't look like it would just be specifically for the tape library, which we know that they've been interested in purchasing before, because a lot of the stars that they have now, Ring of Honor has some early footage of those guys, like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Austin Aries. I mean, there's just a plethora of guys. Kevin Owens, El Generico, Sami Zayn. So they definitely have been looking to accrue that for a while. However, it looks like the talks have been starting to become more about an outright takeover, if you want to call it that, no pun intended, to NXT, about completely purchasing everything and then having Ring of Honor have its own weekly show on the network. Now, this would absolutely suck for my workload, but I'm kind of torn on this, because it seems like the WWE is almost trying to do what they did in the 80s, where they really kind of gobbled up all the territories, because they're not just after Ring of Honor, they've been putting out feelers to other companies, across the US and in the United Kingdom. What's kind of your stance on this whole thing?
I guess mixed feelings is what I had said when we were messaging about it the other day, and I guess the mixed feeling is, what are they going to do with it, and how are their fingerprints going to affect it? Because obviously the WWE has a distinct way of doing business and putting on shows, and a lot of people, when they seek out a promotion like Ring of Honor, not only do they tend to have a lot of up-and-coming stars who, for their own glory, they end up in WWE, like all the guys that you mentioned. I just wonder what it's going to bring to the table that is, say, different than NXT, right? Like, are we just going to have a second NXT? Because if we treat it like a second NXT, like a second developmental territory, it's going to water down both NXT and it's going to water down Ring of Honor. And that's kind of what I worry about, rather than just letting them independently do their own thing and make their own decisions. Sometimes it's just like in the corporate world, too much consolidation. When too many companies merge, well, you lose a little bit of uniqueness. And so if WWE gobbles up Ring of Honor, what's going to happen to make Ring of Honor unique?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The only way that this is going to work is if it's owned by WWE, but they continue to let Ring of Honor kind of do their own thing. Of course, that's probably not going to ever happen 100% that way. Somebody within WWE would have final say on, probably what gets put on television. But I think that they can kind of get away with that by it being on the network, because primarily the network is the hardcore fans. It's not really catered to, like WrestleMania, they bring in the big names to try and cater to the casual fan. The network's not really catered to that, which is why NXT can be so different and try new things like they do, and essentially why it became such a success. So the only way that this is going to work is if they kind of allow them to, book their own stuff. Just let them be Ring of Honor. Don't turn them into like a WWE version of ECW. That's definitely not what we need to see. Plus, a lot of those guys that I mentioned, have come from Ring of Honor, and WWE, they really get a lot of their talent from that company. So I don't think, like you said, you don't want to consolidate all of that.
Yeah, I just don't want a second NXT. I want something unique. Like, can it work? Absolutely. Honestly, I think the jury's out in terms of how they'll handle it. And like you said, they're going to have their fingerprints on it. God knows Vince McMahon isn't going to let anything go on the network without, his okay. But I hope that they let it be its own unique product.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. Anything else would be uncivilized.
I was just thinking that.
Anything else, it's not going to work. I don't see it. Either way, it's probably going to make a lot of people angry because, I don't know, people are talking about WWE buying up the quote-unquote competition, but I don't see Ring of Honor as competition. Nobody is competition to them at this point. I mean...
No, they're on their own level. Ring of Honor isn't competition, it's an alternative. And I think that some people that seek out a promotion like Ring of Honor, or even if they try to stream something like New Japan or anything else like that it's not competition, it's an alternative. Maybe, or it's either an alternative or a supplement. Maybe, you love wrestling so much, you watch WWE and you watch Ring of Honor and you watch Lucha and you watch New Japan or anything like that. But some people seek that product out because they're dissatisfied with something about WWE or several things about WWE. So I just hope that, like I said, I just hope it's its unique product.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. So speaking of people or fans being unhappy, over the last week and a half or so, Doug and I both released columns, and they were both centered around the Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania, which there's not really... It's kind of like being a fan of the New England Patriots. You either love it or you hate it. There's not really too much in between on this, so... There was recently a report that, I kind of went into this thinking that, Goldberg's done. This is how he walks off into the sunset. But there was recently a report that said that WWE views his run as a success and would be interested in using him further after WrestleMania. Now, I am against this. I think if I was Goldberg, what better way to kind of walk off than to have your last match in the main event of WrestleMania. No matter what the outcome, I think we both kind of feel that Brock's going to win, which we'll get into next week when we do our WrestleMania prediction show. But I don't know. I unless you're hard up for money, which I don't think Goldberg is, I don't really see the need to keep him around further than WrestleMania.
Yeah, if you go on any website that looks up wrestlers' net worth, Bill Goldberg is not hurting for cash, that's for sure. Neither is a lot of people. They still seek paydays, of course, but Bill Goldberg is now 50 years old. He's not hurting for cash. It took him 12 years before he made a return to the company. He's a special treat. And if you're a special treat, if you're 50 years old and you're a special treat, then that's exactly what you should be. A special treat. And like you said, like you put out a column that was differing from mine, that said, we should enjoy this time with him. But yeah, he should definitely ride off into the sunset Because if you have a special treat, but then you pour a bunch of water on it and you water it down and you drag it out too long, well, then people have less great feelings about it in memory. So just let him ride off into the sunset after WrestleMania, whatever it is. When I wrote my column, I should clarify, and I tried to make it clear, I wasn't being negative on the match, and I wasn't trying to be negative on the fact that the title should be involved. I'm just worried about how the fans are going to react, and so that was kind of the premise of my column, because you've got a guy, again, who's 50 years old, who was 12 years out of the company, who even in his prime, one of his big knocks was, well, can he work long? Can he work good? And now you're going to charge them with the WrestleMania main event, your Super Bowl main event. If it's a squash, I worry about how the fans are going to react, not only to the legacy of Goldberg's run, but also, I guess I'm not so worried about Brock, but just I kind of worry about how they're going to treat them both. So I think that it should be a slugfest. It doesn't have to be a technical masterpiece. I just hope that they go for a while and they make it brutal and they make it so that the fans are like, man, that was brutal and that was awesome. But because Goldberg has come back and he's only worked 2 matches and those 2 matches have been under 2 minutes, I'm thinking to myself, man, if you do a squash at WrestleMania, I don't know how fans are going to react.
I don't think they'll take it well, and I'm still of the belief that this is going to last less than 5 minutes. I really think that. So we know that the last time that they faced off at WrestleMania 20, did not go well and had that reaction that you're talking about, primarily because the fans all knew that both of those guys were leaving. So, do you think that there's any possibility that WWE is kind of leaking this, I guess, little bit of info out that they might want to keep Goldberg around to try and maybe, I guess, kind of negate some of the bad reaction towards Goldberg? Because if he's leaving, then people are going to know what's going to happen and they're going to boo him.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wouldn't. I almost used the word swerve. I guess that's not a swerve. It's more of a setup so that people don't completely reject the babyface. And when I say that, I mean, I guess Lesnar's the heel in the situation. Lesnar's always kind of a tweener. Lesnar's not a babyface or a heel. He's like
Undertaker. He just is who he is.
Right. Yeah. He's Brock Lesnar, and sorry, I got distracted again by an old pay-per-view. Spike Dudley coming out with a Tom Brady jersey on.
He's a smart man, that Spike Dudley.
Yeah, so Brock is who he is. That could be a very good point. I hope, whether they tease this or not, that they just let this run be what it was and let him ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, that's definitely how I feel about it, too. If he was to stick around, it obviously would not be anything full-time. It would be kind of a special occasion thing, which, I mean, I guess that could be okay, but outside of Brock, I don't know how many other guys you really can throw him in there that would be, I guess, legitimate, because now you've kind of put yourself in this corner where both of his matches have been less than 2 minutes, so, I mean, are you going to throw him in there with Sami Zayn and expect it to go 15 minutes? Right. It's just not going to happen, so.
Yeah, because honestly, what other special attraction kind of matches could he have? There's
only a couple, really. It's
Taker.
Roman, Taker, Cena.
Yeah. But I honestly, I don't want to see any of those. I
don't either.
And when I say I don't want to see it, it's not that. What I mean is, I hope that, okay, it's been 12 years, he comes back, he makes this great comeback. His comeback promo was one of my favorites, if not my favorite of last year. He comes back, he catches Brock off guard and squashes him. Everybody's shocked. He has one last little run with the title, and he goes out on WrestleMania. That's done. put the bookend on Goldberg right there.
See, the other thing to me is because he's talked this whole time about wanting to come back so that his wife and his kid could see him wrestle, and so if you kind of extend that, don't you think that kind of, I guess, taints what you said about coming back just so your kid could see you do it?
Yeah, it ruins the specialness of it. Yeah.
All right, so some more big news over the past week. Since the Broken Hardys, or the Hardys, left Impact Wrestling in late February, there's been so much speculation on their future. At first it was, they're talking to WWE, and then they make a surprise appearance for Ring of Honor and win the tag titles. And then there was reports that WWE's out of the question. And the most recent one we're hearing now, which I totally believe, because Matt has even said that they're still talking to WWE and other companies, is that the WWE has offered them a new contract. No specifics on any kind of details of the deal or anything like that. It's only been offered. It has not been signed, so don't anybody go run into the social media that already have signed, because it hasn't happened yet. However, according to sources, it's looking like an inevitability, quote unquote. So I mean, I'm all for the Hardys coming back, but you'd have to imagine that the legal battle that they have with Impact Wrestling going on right now it's probably going to put a damper on that, especially if they want to use the broken characters, because that's the whole basis of the legal battle, which, let's be honest, Impact Wrestling has no legs to stand on as far as I'm concerned when it comes to that whole thing. So I would imagine that the Hardys will end up winning out on that. So with the Hardys coming back, would your opinion change on that if they weren't able to use the broken gimmick and just kind of had to go back to being the Hardys? Because I don't think it would work. I think the arena would be filled with delete chants.
I was just going to say the exact same thing. I mean, you could bring them back as two Doink the Clowns, and the whole arena would be cheering delete. So it's going to happen in some way. And like you said, Impact doesn't really have a leg to stand on, and the crowd is going to be chanting delete. So even if they run on some kind of small technicality where they're not technically gimmick infringing, but I don't think TNA or Impact Wrestling, I don't think they have the license on the word delete. So
no, they definitely don't.
So I mean, one way or another, they're going to have to come. They're not only are they going to have to, they will come back with some variation, if not directly, then slightly indirectly, of some kind of broken characters, because
I think that they have to come in as the broken characters, and then before they leave, go back to, I guess, their regular selves for their final.
Yeah, I think so
long.
too. And yeah, I mean, obviously there's the talks that they've been offered a contract, even though it's not official. It's definitely happening. I think for a while, because, every time the Royal Rumble comes around, right, everybody fantasy books who's going to come back for the Royal Rumble, and Jeff Hardy's name has been the standby for years now. Him and Kurt Angle, like, they're the two guys, along with a guy like Shelton Benjamin, that have just been the standby for the surprise return. So people have been talking about the Hardys coming back for quite a while now. And honestly, for a while, I was thinking to myself, man, they've kind of got a good deal. I kind of understand why they're not coming back. I mean, I think they're both in their 40s now, and while their base salary for Impact Wrestling is not nearly what a top guy in WWE is going to make, I'm pretty sure their base was still around $500,000, and it gave them less of a commitment with the company itself, and it gave them the flexibility to work independent bookings if they so chose. So they kind of controlled their own life for a while.
Which is exactly why it fell apart with Impact, because they were trying to get a cut of that.
Yeah, and so, but they've said all along, we're not retiring without one more WWE run. Because I'm thinking to myself, like, if they come back to WWE, they're probably not going to get a top guy contract. So the contract that they're making with Impact is probably on par with what they might make with WWE. Plus, they have a lot fewer commitments and a lot more flexibility. So it made sense for a while. Now, I think they're probably starting to wind down, which is why they want this last run. I'm excited for it. And legal battles aside, the crowd's going to be chanting delete, so they're going to do something with that.
I would imagine that if they were getting close to the same base in WWE that Impact was getting them, I would think that the merchandise sales in WWE would be so much stronger that they would end up making way more money.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest thing with them, I know that Matt probably wants some sort of creative control if they're going to do the broken thing. I don't know that WWE will give them that because that's not, I mean, that's kind of unheard of there. But other than that, the biggest thing with them coming back would be the schedule, because obviously they can't work or want to work a full-time schedule at this point. And thank God that Matt Hardy's wife, has been left out of this as well, because I watch very little Impact, and she's insufferable. I mean, plus, especially from what I've seen on her in social media, I can't imagine WWE wants anything to do with that. But speaking of Impact, did you happen to see how they wrote the Hardys off of television?
I didn't, no.
This is the story of Impact Wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. So, the Hardys were the tag team champions, and essentially they teleported to nowhere. And the Decay shows up in the parking lot, and the tag belts are just laying on the ground. And they take them, and I guess they're the new champions? I don't know. But that's how they wrote their tag team champions off of television. So, I know they're under a new regime now, but if that's the best they could come up with to write the Hardys off TV, I don't know about that. I don't think it looks too good for them. We'll see. They're like, I don't know, they're like Deadpool, like, they just can't die, you know what I mean? Like, they've been so close so many times, and it's kind of remarkable to me that they're still around.
Yeah, I mean, and as you were telling that story, I was taking a drink of water. I literally almost did a spit take when you said that. But yeah, I imagine that if Dixie Carter's papa didn't have so much money fueling them for all those years, prior, I can't imagine they would have survived.
No, I mean, they barely did until they got the new buyer. Since we're talking about Impact Wrestling, which we don't really talk about too much, any opinion on the partnership they just formed with AAA?
I didn't even see that. Tell me.
Yeah, they just formed a partnership with AAA out of Mexico, obviously, if you've never heard of Lucha Libre AAA before. I don't know too much about their product, but it kind of reminds me of what WCW did with New Japan in the 90s. There's going to be a talent exchange. I don't know. I think that's actually a pretty good move for Impact Wrestling, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
what could they do wrong?
Right, they're
possibly worse at this point.
They're in dire need of anything. And yeah, I've been watching all those old WCW pay-per-views and following that era. And, the New Japan partnership worked out well for them. And then WCW went overseas. They had some big shows over there. They had a big show in North Korea, which was kind of the biggest audience wrestling has ever seen, probably because the government instructed everybody to go to the show. But hey, Ric Flair was there.
Yeah, it was like 108,000 or something like that?
It was something insane. It was, I think it was unofficially like 160, but
Holy.
it was officially 140. I'm drawing a blank. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the name of the event. But yeah, that happened. But their partnership in general worked out pretty well. They had a couple shows where some of the New Japan guys came over and put on great matches with WCW guys. Later along the way, speaking of breaking news, Jim Cornette is going to make his first appearance on WWE in years after being the go-to shoot guy who's had plenty of interesting things to say about the company in the last decade, because he'll be inducting the Rock and Roll Express into the Hall of Fame, but he ran Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and Smoky Mountain also had a partnership with WCW at one point. Did they have a partnership with WWF too, or?
I cannot remember if it was like a partnership, but there was definitely some kind of a talent exchange where Smoky Mountain guys were appearing on Raw. ECW did something similar. No, 96, I believe.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that area. But yeah, I think it's a great move by Impact because they just lost, the Hardys, and Mike Bennett and Maria are gone, and Drew Galloway's gone, and they've been losing some big names, so anything they can do to try and cultivate some newer talent and maybe catch some kind of a spark, good for them. We all know competition, even though they're not really competition to the E, is a good thing, so I think the more companies we can keep around, as much as I will rag on Impact Wrestling, the better. So that being said, we'll touch on a couple of quick things from WWE programming this week. One big story from each show. So, of course, the big story from Raw this week was, well, we've known for quite a while that Mick Foley has been needing to take some time off to get hip replacement surgery. He's really been hurting, and the traveling has kind of been killing him. So we finally saw him written off TV this week, where he got fired. So I think I already know the answer, Doug, but kind of what were your kind of thoughts on them doing this before WrestleMania? Because I feel like they should have waited until at least the night after. And then who are you thinking will end up being the new general manager?
Well, I think a lot of people know who the new general manager is going to be.
Kurt Angle.
Right, yeah. It might be a guy that got a lot of "you suck" chants, and when he comes back and that music hits, there's still going to be those chants, but it's going to be out of complete endearment because that's the most fun entrance music chant there is. Way better than John Cena sucks.
Oh yes, way better, way better.
No, Kurt Angle is probably going to be the new GM, and yeah, it's no secret that Foley needed the time off. In terms of the timing, I don't know. I guess it depends what their plans for WrestleMania are. Obviously, Kurt's going into the Hall of Fame that weekend, so maybe they're going to, have him make some big important appearance at WrestleMania to that essentially, sends him into that role.
Yeah, that was the only thing I could think of because, you want to save the big stuff for the night after WrestleMania, which we all know, which, I mean, honestly, a lot of people look forward to that more than they even do WrestleMania. I know last year I did anyway. But that's the only reason why I feel like they probably should have waited a little bit. I mean, they've waited this long. What's a couple more weeks of him having to hobble around?
Right.
But yeah, it's gotta be Kurt Angle. I would be willing to bet any amount of money on it. If it's not Kurt Angle, though, any thoughts on who it could or should be?
I'm so sold on Kurt Angle that
it's hard to think of anyone else.
I can't think of. Well, first of all, I can't think of anybody that would top that.
I have one name in mind.
All right.
Sting.
Oh man,
Sting.
Yeah.
I thought would have been a good choice for a GM back at around draft time last year. I don't know if that would be a bigger name than Kurt Angle. I mean, they're probably about equal, but I think the reaction for Angle would be bigger because it's been longer since we've seen him.
Right. Yeah. No, I still think it's going to be Angle. I never even thought of Sting. I mean, either would be cool. I think Angle will be better received for the reasons you just said.
Plus, the advantage of having Angle come back and portray that role, as long as he passes all of the WWE medical and physical stuff, you can have it lead into a match where if you have someone like Sting or even, Foley, you don't have the option of running an angle where it culminates in a match.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. You maybe could with Sting. I don't know. Last I heard is he still was holding off on that neck surgery for whatever reason. I don't know. I think any match with Undertaker is out the window at this point, and has been for a while. But yeah, it's got to be Kurt Angle.
Well, and when you talk about an angle as a GM that may culminate with a match, if rumors are true, AJ Styles may be moving to Raw, so there you go.
Yeah, who I originally pegged Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles for WrestleMania. So I think that I definitely would like to see that.
I would too.
Even at this age for both of them, they both can still go. Obviously, AJ can still go, and Angle can give you a classic. I think he's got at least one or two more in him. So
yeah, I think I think I heard somewhere that it was the triple threat between AJ Styles, Kurt Angle, and Samoa Joe. That was the only 5-star match in TNA's history.
I don't know that for a fact, but that sounds right. That definitely sounds right. At least the participants, anyway. All right, so on SmackDown Live this week, I think me and Doug both kind of agree that the best part of the entire show was the Total Bella's quote-unquote bullshit segments by The Miz and Maurice. So I can't think of anybody that didn't find this funny unless you're a major Cena and Nikki Bella mark. I mean, pure gold by The Miz, who just continues to impress me and has done so for well over a year now. I mean, you got to get this guy in some top programs. Like he's got to be challenging for the top title at some point this year. I feel it in my bones, Doug.
It has to happen, and yeah, no, those segments were absolutely hilarious. Just like the Miz and his John Cena impression was just a riot. And we're gonna get into more of this, with our picks next week. So I'm not going to say necessarily who I think is going to win this match, but it's pretty common knowledge that both John Cena and Nikki Bella, for two different reasons, are probably going to be gone for a while. And so while WrestleMania does cater to the more casual fan, and the more casual fan is going to gravitate to the babyface team of John Cena and Nikki Bella, and I feel like they're probably going to have that kind of celebration. My thinking about this match and my wondering is, in terms of who's going to win, is The Miz is going to be charged, more so than he has already in the last calendar year, with carrying SmackDown to SummerSlam. Because Cena's going to be gone, Nikki's going to be gone, AJ's probably moving to Raw sometime in the near future. The Miz has been pure gold, and he's going to have to be the top heel on SmackDown if he's not already.
Especially if you're moving AJ to Raw and then taking Roman to SmackDown in return. You're losing. I mean, you still got Bray, but you're basically losing your top heel, arguably.
Right, yeah. So Miz is going to have to carry SmackDown in a lot of ways for like the next 4 or 5 months. So I'm pretty sure that the golden couple of WWE will probably end up on top. But in terms of momentum, Miz is going to have to carry the show while John's going to be gone. So,
I mean, if Orton ends up taking the title from Bray Wyatt, then I think, we've seen it before, but it's been some years. I think that there's a great program to be written between Orton and The Miz.
Absolutely.
And, of course, getting back to these segments, the reason why hardcore wrestling fans such as myself or Doug like them or enjoy them so much is because Miz is saying stuff that we all think already about Cena and Nikki Bella. Like, you have to respect Cena because of the run that he's had, and I will give Nikki credit where credit's due. She's come back from that serious neck injury and seems committed to being in the ring. But, I mean, let's be honest here. They're both just, I like to call them celebrity fluff. Like, we need someone on a red carpet. let's send Nikki, or I don't know. I've never quite had the same level of respect for Nikki, just because there's no denying that her star has risen since she started dating Cena. Now, how much truth to that there is, I mean, who knows, but it certainly seems that way.
Yeah, and
Are you getting enthralled with
no,
this?
I just didn't know what
There are scantily clad women in the ring on this whole pay-per-view, so Doug's like, what? Somebody
Right.
talk to me?
No, I didn't know where you were in, and sorry, no, and it's funny because when it comes to like the Miz and Maurice, you could say, well, they're both stars in their own right, but it's definitely not. It's not on the same level per se, but also, I mean, just Miz is so good. Like he's just so good. I really can't say enough good things about him.
Doug just loves The Miz.
Doug loves the Miz.
Is that going to be your new obsession? Is Chris Jericho going to have to take a seat?
Well,
take a back seat?
It's no secret that I love The Miz, but I think the reason that I gravitated to him in the first place was of how much he reminded me of Chris Jericho.
I mean, they are boys, so...
Yeah. So, no, he's kind of Jericho light, so...
Jericho light. Diet Jericho. Yeah. Drink it in, man. All right, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Dougie, thanks for coming on by again.
Absolutely.
And, of course, everybody else, be sure to listen to future episodes when they come out.
Right.
On iTunes, YouTube, you know the deal. And if you want to follow Doug on Twitter, you can do so at...
TRR_Doug.
That's DOUG. For anybody that is not good at spelling, since we have some dumb wrestling fans out there, we've determined today.
Correct. But none of you are dumb.
Right, because you listen to Top of the Morning, presented by TopRopeReport.com. Bing! That's... I need a little sound effect for my smile there, even though nobody can see it. All right, Dougie, we will see you in a couple of days, and yeah, that's gonna do it.
Sounds good.
Okay, Top Ropers, that was our episode for this week. Episode 20, the week in review with Doug Berrill. As usual, we would like to encourage everybody to keep reading TopRopeReport.com for all the latest and greatest news in the world of professional wrestling. You'll get stories similar to what we talked about on the show this past week. So definitely make sure you hashtag #GetOnTop with TRR. If you would like to follow us on Twitter, we are on there at TRR Wrestling, and we are also on Facebook at TopRopeReport.com and Instagram at TopRopeReport.com. You can follow Doug on Twitter at TRR_Doug, and I am also on the Twitter machine at TRR_EAmes. That's EAMES. Be sure to check out all episodes of the Top of the Morning podcast. Subscribe to the show. We are on iTunes. You can also check us on SoundCloud, YouTube, and Podcruncher. Of course, next week we will be getting into our WrestleMania preview and prediction show, so Doug will be back again. And then the week after that, we've got a nice guest joining the show, who is a radio personality that's pretty well known in the good old state of Maine, so any locals will definitely know who that is. So that's something cool we've got coming up, and we'll definitely be looking to bring you some more great interviews. I'm working on a couple of things here and there, so hopefully we'll have some more great stuff for you in the future. So until next time, my friends, we always leave you with some positivity. Just don't forget, it's not how hard you get knocked down, but whether or not you can kick out.